Without the power of God behind everything I do, I really am completely inadequate.
I'm helping the culture. These guys are part of us as well. You know, these guys are our cousin. I'm helping the culture. I'm pushing the culture forward in another way.
Hey, black child, be what you can be, learn what you must learn, do what you can do, and tomorrow.
What do you do after you read? What do you do after you know all, right? And you can say that you're truly conscious. How are you putting what you know into action?
This is the Initiative radio show, shifting the paradigm through conversation on any and everything relating to our communities and culture. Now introducing your new girl, Jasmine Renee.
What's up? It's your new girl, Jasmine Renee, here at the Good News Radio Station, bringing to you the Initiative Radio Show. If you've seen the flyer, which has been circulating quite a bit, we are talking about midterm elections today. But you know how I get my show started is talking about community events. Last night, Queen Auntie, as I like to call her, Elena Love, she threw her Cultural Cool event, which has been a bi-weekly event that she's been doing. So I'm guessing not this Friday, but the Friday after that, she'll be doing another one. But she has a live band, and as you guys know, I'm like a super fan of live bands and poetry and all that kind of stuff. So make sure you follow her at all things Elena Love. And then, like always, Unplugged is doing their Tuesday night thing at the Study, and Spoken Word Sunday on Sundays in Long Beach. They're doing their thing. Shout out to Trish, who's also carrying a little king. Just sending her love and blessings and all of that to her and her dude. But yeah, I think that's pretty much, that kind of like does it. Peace of Mind, an event is coming up the 24th. It's the 23rd.
Yeah.
No, it's the 24th. I'm sorry.
It's the 24th of Saturday, yeah. Our Mind on the Mic, our next
Mind on the Mic. And shout out to
Saturday
them
the
for
24th,
the event and expanding, or shout out to us, because they just had an event in Pomona, which is super dope, and a lot of people came out. Yeah, so shout out to that. Do you guys, well, we have guests in the studio, but do you guys have any things that you know are coming up this week, either like today or anytime between now and next Saturday?
I don't know.
No.
I think you covered it.
Okay. Well, yeah. So those are just some things you can check out for. And then, like I always do, if you send me something or if I see something that's coming up, I will post it on the Instagram page at the Initiative, no E at the end. And you can stay caught up on everything that's going on in the community. But like I said, we have guests in the studio. We have Deja Iman, who is always in the chat box. We have Cheyenne here and Ashley. And they're in here basically just to talk about the midterm elections. As you guys saw in the post, like 113 million people voted. And of course, not all of them voted in our favor, but there was a significant increase for our people that voted. And I feel like it's important to ride this wave that today, Saturday, 4 to 5 days later after the election, I think it's important to have these conversations because we've been seeing all types of posts about voting and where to vote and who to vote for. But it's like now, so where do we now put our action into? We casted our ballot, but where do we now cast our actions into? So I'm going to let them go and introduce themselves and say a little bit about what they do. Deja, did you want to start off?
Sure. My name is Deja Iman. You know, I am the creative director of Peace of Mind, which means I find the talent and kind of help with organizing our open mics. So if anybody is listening and they are an artist who wants to share their art and their voice, contact us at Peace of Mind CPT, peace as in PEACE, and then hit us up. I'm also an artist of my own, recording artist, just got my bachelor's degree in musical theater. I have representation with Wealth Nation and Sony Music, so that's what I've been doing and working on these past few months, just trying to get on myself. And I'm here because I think I'm an emotional voter, you know what I mean? I think I voted out of the pure sake of I was fucking scared within these last 2 years, so that's kind of why I'm here and why I had such a big desire to vote with this midterm election, because there is so many of my people affected by this, so that's definitely what fueled me to vote this year.
So, Cheyenne?
Hey everybody, my name is Cheyenne Winston. I am the founder of a millennial civic engagement organization called the New Black Era. And what the New Black Era does, we provide a platform for millennials, specifically African American, but not like only inclusive to African American. I'm Black, so everything I do is from the Black lens. So we have a platform where we inspire millennials to engage civically their way. So as you mentioned, as an artist, we not just inspire, but we provide the platform, the collaborations to create content that is from our lens. So nobody speaks for us. That was the genesis of why I started the organization in 2014, and it has grown to be an octopus with arms in different places. So there is a strong artist perspective. I grew up dancing Little Washington, Debbie Allen at Faithful Central. So I was taught at a young age dance was my way, art was my way of expression, because otherwise I would be upset. So my temper, literally. So we have programs at the ISF public schools where we teach civic engagement through art, which is so dope because they make a music video. They do absolutely everything, because it's not that we just want you to express yourself. We want to teach you how to use your talent and make that a career, make that a hobby, make that an interest. So you want to do a music video? Okay, so where's my production team? Who are my directors? Who are my actors? Who's writing the script? Who's writing the lyrics? This lyric is poetry. What is poetry? Who's Tupac? Who's Jay-Z? Like, we have these candid conversations sponsored by the school, paid for by the school, because they've seen the engagements. That's the second leg. The other leg is this actual civic engagement, which I have been doing, but I'm growing my team. Like, the next 6 months is all about building the New Black Era team. For the past 4 years, I have done it by myself successfully, but I can't go any further on my own. So that is literally being at the Empowerment Congress, being at the town halls, being involved in the political process. My engagement with politics is different. My degree is in politics. Like, I've always questioned who, what, when, why, how. I grew up in South LA, Inglewood, LA border, and I went to school on the west side. So when I'm getting on the metro, to the green line, to the blue line, to the Culver City bus, to the Santa Monica bus, I'm like, why does it look different? And at a young age, I asked my mom. And then in high school, I challenged all those norms. I made sure that we were represented. Like, we're not just kids from the ghetto getting on the bus at Windsor Hills to go to Santa Monica.
Right.
Like, no. So that led me into really going into politics, studying in Louisiana, seeing the complete difference just from California to Louisiana when it comes to resources. So that's always, I question everything. Like, why, who, what? That doesn't make sense. And that led me into politics. And this election was important to me because I have always been civically engaged. Just now am I starting to be more outgoing with that, because politics has not always been cool. So this election season was like, y'all, come listen. Like, let me, and it was not a burden, but it was not easy for me to really just every day give that 4 or 5 hours of time to educate everybody. Not everybody, but educate my peers, educate my network. But it was impactful. People called me, everybody called me, what does this proposition mean? What is it for? What is it that? And I'm like, okay, well, let me break it down. But when people start having that conversation, I'm like, yo, we're going far. We're going far. All we have to do is have those people who are willing to sacrifice the time to break down high-level jargon, information. What are bonds? What is this? How does that make sense? It doesn't pay for. Who cares about water? Who cares about this? And we're just like, okay, yo, well, if we don't vote for water now, we're gonna end up like Flint. Like, just things like just making everything like, why are we voting? Because we're voting for sheriffs. So 96% of black kids going to jail because they're doing the same thing as white kids. We need to replace them. Oh, okay, so we making it
voting for judges, exactly.
Making politics relatable. And I think that's one thing that, not to just go off, but like talking about what I do, the New Black Era, civic engagement is another part, and the other part is advocacy. So I use my art to create. When my mind just sees things, I'm like, ooh, I should video record that. Let me call my videographer friend. Let me call this friend. Let me call this friend, and collaborate and create a project that just shares my how I feel. Like, I really started the New Black Era because of the misuse of black bodies, like the killing of black men, the taking advantage of black women, our bodies, and not just like, I'm not that type of person who's like, oh man, music is the worst for black women, but just acknowledging like, yo, come on. Like, so I know it's a lot, but so the New Black Era is going to outlive and outgrow me. It is an organization that will be passed down like the Brotherhood Crusade. I am growing it as a structural platform, as not just a project, not just a campaign, but as a full working nonprofit organization. And that's because I'm seeing how everybody is getting engaged, but they're bringing something to the table that I didn't think about that. Okay, so how can I structure that into programming? My degree is in politics. Just finished Law Pi, which is a Los Angeles African American Public Policy Institute. And let me just say, if you are a black woman and you're into like changing something, sitting at policy making tables, you need to do Law Pi, because I had no idea about it before I did. And afterwards, I got like the keys to the city. So I just finished Law Pi. I'm in grad school for nonprofit management. I got my grant writing certificate from Cal State Dominguez Hills, and I'm sure I'll get a doctorate sometime soon. Just really challenging norms. Like, yo, it's black women out here doing it, and it's just like I love this podcast, and I love all of us, because like I love Angela Rye and I love Melissa Harris Perry, but there cannot be two women speaking for all of us. Right. There cannot be two black women and taking the burden of representing everybody. Like we engage differently, and it's my goal for all of this, everything that we're doing, to be the hugest platform. And what does that mean? And for 4 years it's been successful, but I'm like, no, man, we got to do more. So that's a long story of what I do. I do tons of other things. I'm a public affairs consultant, working on infrastructure and development, assuring affordable housing, that the community thrives in city development. So currently working on the LAX expansion. I'm working on the same team for the MLK outreach. It's the same team for Crenshaw Destination. It's the same team for Metro. So it's just a black-owned firm. She's bomb. Her name is Jamara Hayner. I didn't know about her. I found out about her through Law Pi.
Listen, the application is coming up for Law Pi.
You
just want to
plug.
Just want to plug.
You have to anyhow, don't want to just take too much time, but like I'm out here just like really representing like young black. I don't mind being the youngest person in the room. Like it used to be like, oh, I'm the only black woman. Now after Law Pi, it's like I'm not the only black woman. Now it's like I'm the youngest. I'm like, yep. Give me the
And I think it's important because, like you said, with the Angela Rye and Simone D. Sanders and all of them that are doing, like there is a disconnect between us and them at some point in time. Even when it comes to age, it's just like as a black woman, we can relate. But then as it comes to age, it's just there needs to be someone that's representing at our level.
I think it's definitely time that our generation, it's time for us to step up. Right? And so there's a lot of people that have been leading the fight, but like Cheyenne was kind of explaining, it's our turn.
Right.
In whatever avenue we're in, whether we're in the classroom or out of the classroom, on the stage.
Right.
It's our time. So I guess I'll go ahead and
go ahead and tell us a little bit about you.
So I'm Ashley. I'm super excited to be here. And I find it even more exciting that you are an educator, Jasmine. Yes. I am an educator as well. Grew up in Los Angeles. I never really had a big plan for my life. I would say that I've always been led by my values and like what feels most important to me. But I think one thing is for sure, my parents always taught me the importance of giving back to my community. And so when I was in college, I was exposed to the teaching profession, and I decided to pursue that after graduating. And Crenshaw High School was my first interview.
Okay.
Right? And so I was supposed to go to Texas, actually, but it was really important for me to teach and live in the community that I grew up in. And so first day of school, I always tell this story. I walked into a senior class of over 40 students, brand new, 22 years old, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, wanting to change the world. I don't know if you have similar experiences as that first year of teaching.
Right.
And so as educators, we go through this cycle of anticipation. And my second year was more difficult than my first year, I would say, because the realities of what it means to teach in our schools today really started to hit.
Yes.
Like, am I really making a difference?
Right.
Is this lesson plan really making a difference?
Right.
And so I started to feel really disillusioned and, does it really matter? The problem, especially for our African-American students, not even within the city of LA, but just on a national scale, is so deeply entrenched and needs so much work. It's like, am I making a difference?
Right.
And so actually quit at the end of my second year, and I walked into my principal's office and I told him, I'm not doing this anymore. Like, y'all can have this. I know you just donated this library of books as a peace offering, but you know, it's not gonna work. My mentor at the time, he was like, do you have something else lined up? And I'm like, no, I don't. He's like, go back and get your job. I was like, okay, I'll go do that. And then my third year, through reflection and just really soul searching, decided to go back and kind of be the change that I wanted to see. But during that time, that's where homeroom kind of came about, because that summer between my second and my third year, I was doing a lot of that work in isolation, you know, like that soul searching. What am I supposed to do? Am I really making a difference? And so I thought to myself, what would it be like if there was a place where people that were making an impact, whether inside or outside of the classroom, can do this work together? Right. Because we oftentimes try to do it in isolation, but you can't do this work in isolation. Whether you can't do it, you know, you have to have the community. Right. And so that's where homeroom kind of came about. And I also, you know, I came into contact with so many dope educators that were making a difference for kids in the classroom, but maybe also using their gifts to be entrepreneurs, or a radio show host, or an entrepreneur, or, you know, trying to make a difference in a lot of different lanes. But there was really no space for us to collectively grow, come together, and then make an impact for kids. Right. And so that's how homeroom came about. And it's been really exciting. It has a really grassroots feel to it. I've had the opportunity to collaborate with a lot of great people and organizations to kind of, you know, make it happen. And so the goal is to make educators feel valued, inspired, and connected. Right. So how can we redefine the narrative of what it means to do this work? How can we elevate the stories of educators that are making a difference? Right. Because LA is very entertainment driven. Not a bad thing. I love entertainment, but where's the space that highlights ordinary people doing extraordinary things? I don't think there's a space for that. Right. And so that's really what homeroom is about. And then also vision, right? Right now we're where we're at, but where I foresee homeroom going is being able to highlight and elevate policy issues within education and the experience of the Black or minority student in LA or teacher through media. A lot of people will not go to your board meeting. A lot of people will not be engaged in the policy process, but they will be on social media. They will watch TV. Right. And so how do we engage everyday people in the conversation around education? Because it's not a priority. We look at so why I'm here. The elections, education was not a priority. We weren't talking about it. We were not talking about it, but it's such a huge issue. It is. Yeah. So that's my spiel. I'm excited to be here.
So that's a wrap about pretty much who they are. But yeah, so like you were saying, just being an educator, my brand Initiative was, you know, like birth out of basically being in a classroom trying to teach math and realizing like these 7th and 8th graders, the kids she actually had, which we didn't even know we were at the same school. Yeah, the same school. Time. And I was looking on your A New Black Era, the Instagram, and I'm like, those are my kids. So, you know, the kids that you're dealing with trying to teach them math, and I'm like literally hitting a brick wall, like 2 + 2 is not going to get these kids out of the street. Like, it's literally not going to help them be better. And that's how I was birthed through this. And that's how, with Keith, like, I basically came in here. I was like, I don't have radio experience at all. But at the end of the day, like, I can see the issues that our culture is going through on a very infant scale, because I'm dealing with 11 to 14, 11 to 13-year-olds. So I'm like, when you see the prostitute, you see the drug addict, you see the gangbangers when they're 30, I'm like, I have them 15 years before they hit that. I have them, 16 years before they hit that. And I'm like, that has gave me a whole new perspective on life and just how to move forward as a Black person. And that's why when I hear things like when it comes to education, like those things are not put on a pedestal. Those things are not really put in a place where they think it's a pivotal thing for our children to be educated, not even through the subjects, but educated on life correctly, educated on how to like deal with emotions, how to go about dealing with disappointment and stuff. And I know like even with you, Deja, and just like personal experiences, can you talk a little bit about like how education on emotion is like important?
I think education on your emotional, especially like your emotional intelligence, is really important. And I don't think I really grasped that idea till I was like 24, like
me too,
like 3 months ago, honestly, because I realized like actually going into emotions and going into politics. my cousin asked me, like, not too long ago, we were talking about the election. He's like, well, what made you so in tune with this election, or what made you so in tune with politics? And I had a friend when I was younger actually get killed by a police officer. I suppressed those emotions hella, and I didn't realize that till finally Trayvon Martin got killed, and I was like, oh, I know exactly what this feels like. You know what I'm saying? And that really put me in a terrible place emotionally to, like, why, when I was 13 years old, didn't I have, like, the emotional intelligence to really understand what was going on? So I just threw it away. Like, I literally went to his funeral and never thought about it again. But that was my friend. That was my fucking friend. You know what I mean? So, like, now, when going through, like, this whole new avenue of, like, seeing black kids die so much on your telephone,
right?
Every time that happens, I have to think about my friend. Every time that happens. Like, there's no way around it. You know what I mean? So, like, now my emotional intelligence is saying, okay, we're crying, okay, we're upset, but how do we also find a way to help navigate this narrative? How do we find a way to be involved? You know what I'm saying? So then that's when I started taking myself to BLM meetings when I could. That's when I decided to read up on situations. That's when I decided to become a little bit obsessed with the killings of black men so I can kind of understand emotionally, because I'm not a numbers person. I don't really care about what the judge says after the fact. I'm trying to figure out, how do we heal? You know what I'm saying? How do, like, now... now, because there's so many people who are seeing this on their phone and are becoming desensitized. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that's not okay. That's like why Childish Gambino's "This Is America" video, that video actually pissed me the fuck off. Me
too.
Because I'm just like, this is a narrative we keep seeing, and now we're becoming desensitized to it. So now, when you really go in the streets and see your friend die, or you know, something like that can kind of happen, you don't have the emotional intelligence to address not only your own emotions, but the people around you's emotions. And then I think with lack of emotional intelligence, that makes you, like, desensitized and guarded to where now you don't want to make a change.
Yeah, I think that's so key. Like, I think your pain ultimately pushes you to your purpose. And so before we talk about politics, right, I think as a community, that healing is, like, so important. Even when I think about the education space, like, for example, me as a student, there were so many things growing up that was going on that I had no idea, right? Because in our family is don't ask, don't tell. We don't talk about it. Focus on your work, focus on your books, be successful, right? And when I look back, it's like, okay, why was I consistently getting suspended? Why was I consistently writing standards? You know, why was I consistently doing all of these things? And then I get to a point in my adult life where I'm in the classroom and I'm teaching, and I'm like, okay, I'm making the connections, because as a child, like you said, we're not taught to regulate, you know, regulate our emotions, regulate our internal state. And as a result, you know, certain actions come from that. And so I think it's really, really important for us as a community to see how that's important, both in education and just in the real world, in life, period. Yeah.
I agree. Just to go back to what you said, Deja, about just emotional and trauma. Trauma is something that Black people don't recognize that we endure every single day, right? We live through traumatic experiences. And I have a really good friend. Her name is Jade, and she has just graduated from UCLA, got her master's in fine arts, and has been doing these residencies because she creates bodies of work, interdisciplinary bodies of work that only talk about how Black women heal through police brutality. Like, I have to send you guys a link, because when you watch your video, you're going to be like, okay, I need to go to every single one. And I think that it's interesting because the conversation that we had just recently, she had just finished a trilogy. She's working on a trilogy, and it's been about 2 years that she's been working on this trilogy. And we were speaking in front of a group of people after her show, and it's multicultural, and we were talking about how we were talking about how we're not the conversation of Black trauma is not presented in academia. So people who are doing research, PhDs, and putting out these reports, I know the numbers are important, but people aren't even studying or recognizing it. So it's up to us to show that. And that's why the New Black Era, the homeroom, and your platform is important, because we need to counteract that trauma that we see every day. I don't repost traumatic issues. Don't me neither. Call me. Don't. How did you feel about that? Did you see what happened? Everybody, at this point, I've probably already told everybody about themselves in the past year. Don't send it to me. The New Black Era is not a news source where we repost traumatic issues. We are highlighting how we can change how we are celebrating each other, how we are teaching, how we are shifting the narrative, and how we are combating that traumatic, it's just they do it for the likes. Like, I don't follow Shade Room, I don't follow Gossip, I'm about to unfollow Media Blackout, because at one point it's just like all of them are sharing the same information every single day, and sometimes it's very outdated. So it's like, ooh, everybody likes this, so let me repost this, and now it's like another black body died, or it's just like this it's starting to turn into like, literally, we have to create we have to create the media, the positive media, or even if it's just not positive, the challenging media. We have to create these conversations. We always have to record it. If this is the only way they're going to come get this information, well, we need to be out here no matter how tired it is. And when people ask, why aren't you into politics, I always read this post. You're just not that into politics, but your boss is, your landlord is, your insurance company is, your school board is, your teachers are. That list could go on. And every day they're using their political power to keep your pay low, raise your rent, and deny your coverage, to move out your students inside of that conversation. Like, my friend just became the president of the PTA at her son's elementary school, and she's like, whatever. I was like, you don't understand how important that is. You're 30 years old. You're a 30-year-old black girl from South Central. Okay, you grew up on Century and Western. Okay, you are the PTA president of an elementary school. You don't understand how powerful that is when your perspective is a part of the policy making process. And even though education is not my platform, education is important to me. So now, like, Ashley has an education. I'm connected with Ashley. I'm sending you there, like, because I can talk about why I think education is important, but she can give you the tools. And that's what it is. Like, we have to provide those tools, and I'm also adamant about making sure that the older generation respects what we do.
And I think that's
another conversation.
No,
I think that's
it's a real conversation, though.
I'm with Miss Celestine. I'm with people. Somebody told me when I started my voter education campaign, no need to reinvent the wheel. Just hop on someone else's wagon and expand your network. No, because their wagon is old. Okay, we moving into convertibles now. I'm not getting on the horse wagon. I'm getting in this. No. You know what I mean? Because then I'm going to end up being looked over like everybody else. And then my campaign is not going to be important. And my campaign is voter education. And
and I think, that's important, because even when it comes to education, as you can see, like, when I'm speaking about being an educator, I'm like, so many people want to come into the classroom and write on the board and think that's it. And I'm like, working with those kids at ISF, there was not a day that I could come in and write on the board and tell them to start their warm-up, start their do now. There was not a day that school, with them being middle schoolers, working with 7th and 8th graders, there was not a day. It was always, can y'all sit down, please? Like, what's going on? Like, what's up today? Okay, now we got this down. Okay, can y'all please start this do now? And every time I got the timer up and it's 5 minutes, and I'm like, in 2 weeks, we're going to be able to do this in 5 minutes. And that wasn't a thing, but I had to come in not doing what the older teachers were doing, which was just sitting on the board. I had to go in and check in with my kids and show them, like, I care about what it is that you're going through, even though it might be something very small. I'm here for you. Now, can you please pay attention to this math that I'm about to teach you?
Right. And I think it connects to since we're talking about policy, right? A broader policy within education, the School Climate Bill of Rights that was passed in 2013. So the strategies you were talking about are restorative strategies, right? Where you're checking in with your students and you're making sure emotionally they're okay. And so for people that are listening, educators, not even just educators, anyone, it would be informed about certain policies like that, where money is allocated for schools to train teachers on to do exactly what you were doing. And I feel like that it is happening. It is happening at the local level, but a lot of people don't really know about it. And so I just had to plug that in, because I think a lot of times we talk about our experiences, but we also as a community need to know, okay, how does that translate into policy that's actually happening within the space, and what can we do to, number one, educate ourselves, inform ourselves, and then, hold our elected officials accountable to making sure that those policies are implemented. Because another thing is, you could write policy all day, but we all know culture at the ground level erodes policy. You know, people will do what they want. It could be in writing, but it's like, do people believe it? Do they feel it? Do they know about it?
And I think cultural awareness is also a primary thing. And I think getting into kind of like the midterm election kind of conversation, that for me, because I'm someone who is, like I said on the show last week, I'm very hands-on. I want to get my hands dirty. I do get my hands dirty every single day. Yours? Yeah. Okay. Thank you, bro. What are you for? Okay, yeah. So I do get my hands dirty every single day. I work with kids, and I'm also a girls' high school basketball coach. So that's something, my Monday through Saturday, when I leave here, I'm going to go coach. So I'm with 14 to 17-year-olds in the latter part of my day. In the morning or through like the mid-afternoon, I'm with 3 and 4-year-olds who have autism that are in the inner city. So like my hands are dirty. And then I do this on Saturdays, and then I also have like the organization. So when it came to voting and politics, for me, it was just like, okay, so I'm going to go cast my vote, but then I still feel like this is a white men's game. I still was feeling like this is something where even when you put black officials into these offices, and even when you think about police and the police academy, I had someone that was like, yeah, you know, I have this friend that's going to go join the academy, and, you know, his mind is on straight and he's getting ready to do X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, yo, you ain't finna change nothing. And this is not me being negative or anything, but I'm like, you think something that started way back in slavery days, that was initiated to catch slaves and to catch black people and to take them, you think that's going to really, you coming in is going to make them feel away? Or you think you coming in is going to make them really change what they're doing? And I'm like, it has to be a systematic thing where, okay, if we're talking about just the city and Compton in general, 10 people are going in, right? But that's not the last batch that we have coming in. In about a few more months, we have 10 more people that are joining the academy that are on the similar mindset, and then 10 more people. So now, within the course of a year, we have 30 people that we've infiltrated that are together as a team that are not going in as the lone wolf. And I think with politics, just kind of understanding, and like shout out to Deja and Dre from the Hub Radio in Compton, and a few of my other friends, shout out to Taylor, because they were actively like posting to go vote. And I'm like, yo, like, I don't know not the importance, but I didn't really know what my place was when it came to voting. I was just like, I show up for the kids. When it comes to education, like, yeah, education isn't important, but I show up there. And I know a lot of people feel like that, like, you know, voting isn't important, but hearing you guys say, like, you know, it's like what she said about it's your landlords, it's the people with your money, it's the people with the water and stuff. Yeah.
I think for me, what it was, like, I had to equate it almost to kind of like religion. I'm not a super religious person, and I know you should never mix religion with politics, so I apologize to anybody who's listening to this. This is just like my best analogy. We kind of pray every day. We go to church every day with like hope. The main gist of religion is faith, hope, like will. You know what I'm saying? So unfortunately, granted, yes, voting for black people in the white space is kind of this. Yeah, you're throwing our people into fire. You definitely are, because it is a predominantly white space. But you can't, like, I can't not hope and wish and faith and have a whole bunch of faith that, like, maybe somebody would be able to change something, you know? Or I kind of put it with, like, oddly enough, with the H&M situation where that black kid had on the monkey shirt. If there was just like one or maybe two or maybe three black people in that room who worked for the H&M team, they might have been like, that's not right.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? There just needs to be more of us in spaces to speak for us. Not necessarily, we can necessarily change the whole narrative, but imagine having a few black voices or a few gay voices just kind of ringing in your ear like, that's not how it's supposed to be. You know what I'm saying? That's not how it's supposed to go. Then maybe it'll change. And that's why, again, emotional voter, I'm voting off the pure hope and like an act of like faith and desire and will that my people can push something, you know?
I think that's how I really felt during the election as well too. I think there's a tension that I feel like we should often explore, right? Because I feel like everyday people do feel like that, where even, for example, discussions around Proposition 10 or Proposition 5, oftentimes the media will show it as a very black and white issue.
Right.
Like, this is the way or this is not the way.
Right.
But a lot of us live in this gray area where there are things that we're considering given where we're at or what we're doing. And sometimes feeling as if you have to choose a side feels overwhelming. So you're like, I'm not going to even engage because me as an everyday person, I don't necessarily see how this is going to translate in the trenches, like in your everyday, in your everyday life.
That's what's so important to me because that's what I do.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So let me go back. When you're talking about H&M and the decision making, that's diversity and inclusion in the workplace.
Yes.
And that's not necessarily politics, but it's a political process.
Of course, no.
So,
that was done like
example. So I just want. So this is where I'm coming from. Is that it's not about. Not saying it's not about. Not only do we need to be in politics, we need to be in policy.
Exactly.
It's a complete difference. Policy goes to the smallest of levels. Policy is making a decision that affects multiple people. H&M being an example. So that is you taking whatever it is you're interested in, if it's fashion, if it's music, and you moving up the ladder so you can make sure that you represent people. And so that's why that is important. That's not necessarily something we vote on as a state ballot, but that's something that you can navigate in and then be this woman, this black woman in a policy making, in a decision making position, right? And there's nothing wrong with being an emotional voter. Like there's like, okay, like that is okay because our emotions are based off of our experiences. And when it comes to propositions and not understanding like how it goes in the trenches, and that's so interesting because that's exactly how I see it. Like that's exactly how I see it. Proposition 10 or Proposition 5 or 1, 2, 3, and 4 and all of them, these are high level decisions that trickle down and hit the ghetto first. You want to know why? Because the people with the money who want their way are the ones who make the policy. Propositions are not created by assemblymen, senators, congressmen, and mayors. Propositions are made by a group of people and organizations that have spent 3 or 5 years to get something passed. Now let's talk about a positive one. Youth Justice LA goes hard. That Bail Reform Act that just happened, Lord Jesus, I'm supposed to know these names by heart, like what the Senate bill numbers are. The money bail reform in in California that passed, that Governor Jerry Brown passed just this past few months ago. The the removing of treating juvenile kids as adults. Those bills that got passed by the governor were authored by community organizations. So when you say, what does that mean? That's saying I don't like that, I don't like that, I don't like that, I don't like that. So for 3 years, we about to go hard and get everybody. We about to come Black Lives Matter. It's about authoring policy. Policy and bills are not necessarily initially authored by politicians. They're authored by community members. And then they raise the money. You think that it's a scam when they outside of Vine trying to get you to sign something? No, because that's part of the process that Black people or minorities look over because they think everything is a scam because we've been taught that people are trying to steal our identity by signing something. No, we have to get 300,000 signatures in order for this to move up. We need you. We need everybody to understand what this is. So like it's about us being more aware. I don't like using the word woke. I like saying aware. Like every day someone who's in policy becomes aware of more things, and now that I have this information, now let me translate that onto you. Proposition 10 is important.
Can you explain it? How it trickles down into the trenches? So like she was saying, just so the listeners can visually.
Proposition 10 was the most interesting thing on the ballot, right? Because everybody was like, oh, what is the propaganda is so interesting. The media is so interesting because the rent is too damn high. I'm voting yes on Prop 10. That is where miseducation comes from. Proposition 10 was not a rent control proposition. Proposition 10 was either we remove the state, Costa Hawkins, or we keep it. That was it. It was not, if we remove this will happen. So in California, Costa Hawkins is a state law that requires that doesn't allow rent control after houses were built in a certain year, like depending on like the zone it is in, right? So the argument was, well, the real argument, the Proposition 10 argument was, if I vote yes on Proposition 10, then now the cities decide. The local cities, city of LA, city of Inglewood, city of Compton, they make their own decisions on rent control. Sorry, that's all the vote was for. But the media is like, Proposition 10 will raise your rents. It will it will do this, will do that. Proposition rent, my rent is too damn high. We need affordable housing. That wasn't affordable housing.
So saying yes on Proposition 10 was basically saying yes to the city of Inglewood now is in control. So did people vote yes because they're feeling like my city is in my favor?
So people, now you have a group of people who voted yes because that's exactly true. They're like, my city is going to do rent control. Right. You have people who voted yes who say, I want to see what the city will do. I want to see, because it hasn't been working in this state, I want to see what the city is going to do, right? So my issue and why I educated people and I stood very neutral on it for multiple reasons. One, the firm that I worked for was a lobbyist on Prop 10, so I just really couldn't I stayed neutral on that and was saying, let's stick to the facts. It's not about rent control. It's not about affordable housing. It's about who makes the decision. Does Sacramento make the decision or does LA make the decision? And what I was most interested in or was concerned with, in LA, we're progressive. So we have Supervisor Thomas. We got Garcetti. We got councilmen. We got, Skoblager. We got all these black officials in LA. But we don't have that in Upland. We don't have it in West Covina. We don't have it in Compton. We don't have the leadership in Inglewood. We don't have that in Hawthorne. We don't have that in Lenox. So do you think, so when we vote for a state, for the city to make that decision, how many black people are on city council in those smaller communities where there are high dense of minorities? So when it comes back being in the trenches, it's about saying this is important because when it trickles all the way down, that means, give me an example. Here's an example. Santa Monica has rent control. Can you afford a 1-bedroom in Santa Monica?
No.
I mean, like, even if I could, I'm not spending $3,000 for a 1-bedroom in Santa Monica. And it's rent control. So rent control does not mean affordable housing. And that's when it goes back into educating people what things mean. Rent control means your rent is going to stay the same. But if my rent stays at $3,000, that don't mean shit to me when it comes to being affordable. Right. It doesn't mean anything to me when it comes to being affordable. And I know that that's a high level, gives you a headache talking about it. So I'll take that headache. If that means that more people are a part of understanding what that means. Even in education, why are we voting for our superintendent of public instruction? Well, to me, it was important to have the first black man as the superintendent of public instruction because now you have a black lens in education. He understands the smallest of needs. He understands the restorative education. He understands the sort of policies. He understands the teachers. He moved up from the bottom, being a black man in California, all the way to this top of education.
And I think that brings the question that I included in like the list. Are black politicians actually beneficial for black people? Because I know even with Mayor Asia Brown, who's someone that I know personally, because I'm from Compton, so she's the mayor out there, and a lot of people do not like her. A lot of people do not sit on her side. I've seen her.
That curious?
Because I mean the same thing with Obama. A lot of black people, now that he's not in office, are kind of like, okay, what did you actually do for us? And they're kind of like, with her, what did you actually do? Now the world loves Mayor Aja Brown because she's a black woman and she is, I think, the youngest mayor that they've had, and it's black girl magic, and everybody's on this black girl magic tip. But for the people that are being benefited, or maybe not being benefited from her.
I think it's so unfair for Aja Brown. I think it's so unfair for President Obama is that when you don't understand how policy works, you blame people for not instant action. Like, policy is a strategy. It's a process. It's implementing something now that's going to trickle down 5-10 years later. So I'm just saying, like, how does the trenches, like, what has Mayor Aja Brown done? Mayor, because I've worked with her Bloom Initiative for a few years. Mayor Aja Brown has developers back into Compton. You want to know why that's important? Nobody was trying to put a Best Buy, a Walmart, a every table, like economic development, making sure the streets, like there's only so much you could do instantly. Some stuff takes 3 to 5 years. What have you done for me? Well, your property value is going to start going up. Your school people are going to start looking at your city to bring money into the schools. Like you have to, policy and city planning are so interesting.
I think the thing is that with that, it's, okay, so yeah, you're bringing money into the schools, and this is why with voting, not with voting, with politics is a problem for me, because it's like, okay, yes, these kids have money, and they have the laptops, they have the iPads, and they have everything. They're getting this extracurricular things that are being put into the school, but then what about Ryan? What about, like, Ashley? What about them as individuals? I feel like as a community, I feel like people that are on the political level, I feel like are administrators, because even when I was working in schools, I felt like an outcast advocating for the kids that we were all teaching.
And that's why you guys need to move into administration. You know what I mean? So here, the mayor works on city stuff. The school board is
But I feel like if you are a mayor, you definitely have to go into... You have to know what it is that you're doing. Even being an administrator, a lot of people get into administrative positions and they act as if they forgot what it is to be in a classroom. So if I'm teaching these inner city kids and I have this administrator, you have to have in-class experience to get to the administrative position. So at some point in time, you're telling me, oh, the test scores matter. The test scores matter. Well, they're not understanding, or just like, I don't know if they're doing this at Crenshaw, but you can pass a kid if he has over 30 tardies, over 30 absences, as long as he gets the information. As long as he understands the concepts, and at the end of the semester or the end of the year, if he's able to pass that final, you have to pass him with a D. And that to me is like, we're teaching them a false sense of reward. And that's why I'm like, but that's not something that you can vote on. And that's why I'm saying, like, yes, we bring in the money, but then who's worried about individual children?
I think that is the huge issue when it comes to politics, is that the people are lost. Like those very experiences, right? So yes, funding is important. That is a huge thing that educators should be pushing for 2020, is to increase per pupil funding for schools. But when you talk about those everyday policies that really you would only know if you were a teacher, like where you would really understand like the depths of it. Like for example, last year I was displaced for a week because enrollment was down, right? And because enrollment was down, we lost a teacher. Why did I go? Because it was based off of seniority. It wasn't based off of what I was doing in the classroom. It wasn't based off of my teaching practices. It wasn't based off of those things. Now you look at it from like a larger like policy, like political like standpoint, that's something that people don't want to talk about. That's something, that's an issue that people are like, we don't really want to talk about it. Right. But that is something, when you talk about low income schools, that really impact kids on a huge level.
You're talking about the displacement aspect.
The displacement aspect based off of time versus like really the results that you're getting.
And it's a typical thing, because that's the same thing that happened at ISEF. It was seniority. The ISEF schools, Lord Jesus, and I don't mind putting them out there, they have a hard time retaining teachers. They have a hard time retaining admin. And that was something that happened where each, as an admin, you coming in and you thinking like, I'm gonna bring my team in and all of this. We're gonna weed out whatever it is. And like I said, for me to go in and be an advocate for my kids, why do I feel like I'm the only one advocating for them in meetings?
But I think that you had a very similar issue, and you're at a charter school, and I'm across the way at a public school, right? But we have it's the same issue. It's not really, it's more so about schools within the inner city, and it's hard to attract good talent. It's hard to attract leaders that have an instructional lens that can like really prepare teachers to be able to teach our kids. And so I think when it comes to politics in the media, it is so polarized, where it's like you need to be on this side or you need to be on this side, where like the issues permeate.
People need to stick to issues, not people.
Stick to the issue.
And it's so interesting, and this is why like I absolutely love you guys. Like I have no problem like sharing my emotion, how much I love you guys, because this is what makes it so powerful to have these conversations, because it's challenging. Because I challenge it. Like I challenge the idea of saying that mayors should do this and school boards should do this, but how about the teacher, the parents?
Where's their voice? Let's talk about it.
The PTAs, but listen, There is this one, when I was in high school, there was this one teacher one mom who was at all the meetings. And she was like, I had to start telling my mom, can you start going? Because she's not even talking about black people. She's talking about what her son, Ryan, and such are going to do. But since she's always there, she's making the decision. And I understand. Now, I definitely understand the struggles in getting to the meetings, the issues that we have, single families going inside of school, transportation. Like, I get all of that. Like, I'm not talking about the anomalies. I'm talking about what we can make norms. Right. We can make these conversation norms. If you have a problem with how while they're sending your student home every day, while your son is getting suspended, while all this stuff is happening, you need to be at the school. You need to be telling the administration. Right. And then on top of that, we need to make sure that we're challenging the administration, even regardless of the flack that we get. Now, here's what I'm saying when it comes to like the mayor and what they're like. Not understanding how the bureaucracy works also makes you point blame at the wrong person. So when you're asking the mayor, why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing that? You should be asking the school board. You should be asking you should be asking the superintendent.
But at some point, that I feel like, even when it comes to being a teacher, I know that I'm the leader in this classroom. I know I'm the leader of this class. So then even the point that you brought up about parents, a lot of people bring that up to me and think when we sit down and we talk about the issues in the black community with our students, they think I'm going to be on the side of, these parents need to get the kids together. And my thing is, if this parent is dead or alive, I get a check for teaching these kids for 8 hours. I get a check, regardless of if this parent shows up
all of
or
our
not.
Responsibility.
But I'm saying my job is to be the very best teacher that I can be, even if I do not have parental support for these children. So when people are like, your parents need to start stepping up, and it's like, yes, that would be nice, but I'm getting my check to be a teacher regardless of if that parent shows up or not. Yes. So I think also what you have to do as a leader is understand your children. That parent is not going to come in and tell me, Johnny is X, Y, and Z, and when he gets upset, he does this.
That's why you need the homeroom.
But I have to learn that on my own. And I think as a leader, if you're going to be a governor, if you're going to be the mayor of a city, I think you do need to know the ins and outs of the
education
system.
That's also boards and commissions. So, like, they appoint there are city commissioners, board members who there's a commission over like school instruction, women and families, like health, like, so that's also a trickle down. So the mayor appointed them because they like the new governors come in, right? So just FYI, he's about to be handed a list by all the people who supported him and saying Ashley needs to be on the education commission. Like, I know Miss Celestine just told me we're submitting our list of appointees, and now when Ashley gets appointed, when there's an issue that comes down about like education, and Ashley is the board on that commission, and she's the president of the commission, she's the commissioner. When you go to the governor, he gonna ask Ashley. So when we have our issues, we need to go to Ashley. So there are hundreds of commissioners across LA who look like us, and everybody who look like us is not for us. The LA County District Attorney, Jackie Lacey, is a black woman, and she has not prosecuted not one police officer who has killed a black body or killed anybody out of 422 people. And 422 people in the past, like Black Lives Matter's got the number. She has not. She's a black woman. So it's not about people. It's about issues. It's about where do you stand on these issues. And if you don't stand on these issues, we don't have to elect you out. We coming at you. They have been at her house. They have been everywhere. We're putting the pressure on you. We have to put the pressure on it. And that's why part of what I was talking about during my local 2018 midterm election campaign is we need to mobilize our movement. It's not happening on social media. Yeah, we're getting visibility on social media, but the most traditional ways is what puts people out and what puts people on the spot. What's up?
Yeah, I think that raises a really good point, because I think you keep going back to like the everyday like experience. And so I think it's like people like you in this platform, like raising like those stories and those voices, right? And then finding other people that have like stories and those voices, and you talk about mobilizing, like that's organizing, right? And then you bring those people together, because I feel like, and this in my own leadership, like oftentimes we think leadership is one person, right? But it's really like the power of the collective. And so where do we go from here, and what can like everyday people do like ourselves that are in the trenches that are, it's like literally like tell your story. Tell your story, because people can look at data,
link up with everybody who have the same story.
Well, it's always about your medium. Like I'm a gay black woman in the arts, so there's no way in hell I'm going to be singing about a boy. You know what I mean? I'm not able to do that because that's not my story. You know what I'm saying? I have to write songs about the Orlando shooting because that's something that really affected me. You know what I mean? I have to write songs about strange fruit, and like a metaphor for that, because that's something that's still happening and still affecting me. So it's all about your medium, and I'm so thankful for there's so many different ones because I'm, my medium, I'm a mentor for younger girls in the film industry, you know what I mean? So our medium is always going to be writing, visuals, you know what I'm saying? So I may not be able to relate to y'all. I honestly don't. That's why I haven't been talking to them as much. But this is good to hear because our mediums are different. You know what I'm saying? Which I really, really appreciate and would love to keep growing on because I think that's what's so important. I'm not for everybody and everyone's not for me. So for all of us to have these different avenues, but still our goal is the same.
But I would like to
talk about what you do and how you use what you do to impact other people. Because
for sure.
Coming from a black woman being gay is. I might relate to that same experience, but there's still commonalities in our struggle, in our organizing, in our mobilizing, and then it expands our reach, it expands our thought. Like, so now when we're creating policy, or not saying I'm like a policy maker yet, but I'm saying as we're creating these stories that we're making sure that we're not excluding anybody. So should you not relate exactly to what we're saying in education? Like, I'm passionate about absolutely everything black. That does not have anything to do with religion or sexuality or fashion or anything. I'm like, if it's black and it's good and it's pushing norms and it's next level and it's futuristic, teach me, what should I be including in my policy making process? What should I be including in my thought process that includes you?
But I think beyond that too is like, I think art and education collides so much.
Oh yeah.
And like, I think that's what's actually missing, is that we've gotten away from teaching kids to recognize what their gift is. And a lot of times it is creativity in our communities, and how can kids use that creativity to really change and inspire the world? And so I think that art is the center, honestly. I think, the greatest innovators were artists, creative.
Art imitates life, and that's what I was saying.
Nina Simone, I love her. She's one of my biggest inspirations. Like, I listen to Strange Fruit. I listen to her albums over and over and over and over and over again, just about, and it challenges me every time to figure out how do I use my art. Not just like, I get stressed out sometimes. Often, or not stressed out, I overwhelm myself with thought, right?
Oh, yeah.
So, like, I have to move. Like, I have to move. Like, Lord Jesus, I want to get back into dance shape so I can move even more. But now I'm just, like, putting choreography on other people. But it's just, like, how do I express that? And then when you're trying to share your art with somebody else, what does this move mean? Like, that's a pain move. It's not fun. Don't smile. Put your shoulders down. It's heavy. Like, so your art is important. And it's important. And I know I'm not saying you don't think that.
Yeah, I was like, I think you guys might have heard me say something wrong. I was like, I know that, baby. I'm here to do this for a reason.
You were just saying you don't relate and you haven't said
what I'm saying is I haven't said much because I'm enjoying your guys' conversation. It's so great. It's so good. We are all relatable. All of our mediums can relate. They all meet at the center. Okay. But what I'm saying is I don't know the policies. That's what I cannot relate. Like, I know the policies off of what I decided to read from that pamphlet I got in the mail. You know what I'm saying? But I don't know much more from that, so I cannot relate to that. But of course, art is the core to all of this. And of course, art is like the neutral way of speaking through the pain. You know what I'm saying? I think we all relate through art. Like, a lot of people didn't decide to vote until a song made them feel a certain type of way. Like,
until I'm only the artist.
Yeah, of course. I'm only in music because I was finally able to express a pain. You know what I mean? Which is still related to politics at the end of the day. So, of course, art is the center of all of that. I cannot relate to the knowledge of the politicals. I can only relate to the feeling.
So I want to introduce you to Kristen Sakota.
How do we connect that? I'm sorry. I was just
connect the emotion with
like, for example, you're in the arts industry, right? And so, like, whose job is it to really talk about politics, right? And how can policy in these conversations permeate spaces like entertainment and media? And
I mean, they're doing a great way because, like, luckily podcast is a form of art. It's a medium, you know what I'm saying? So where rappers are not only being asked about their album, they're also kind of being asked about what's going on. And if
they're being forced to.
Yeah, and if they decide, some of them obviously don't have the best answers, but some of them decide to really, show forth. Again, it's like Justine Skye did a great job. She was during the whole, kneeling movement. She was asked to sing the national anthem. She still sang it, but at the end of her national anthem, she kneeled. that, even though it's something minimal,
That was an act.
It's an act.
It was
You know what I'm
symbolic.
saying? There's been artists who have declined performing at the Super Bowl because that's an act. That's me saying I'm standing my ground in this. You know what I'm saying? Beyonce has a bunch of metaphors for Black empowerment in her music and her visuals. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's everywhere. It's everywhere. It's just all about where you're at in your life.
I'm really enjoying LeBron too.
Yes,
with his show.
yes.
And
LeBron,
he's been like really, and I want you to talk because you guys mentioned mobilizing it, and I think like what we have seen, because I literally remember, I forgot who it was, but a few months ago, the first time I saw somebody put vote, and all it said was like an orange background, and it just said vote in like white writing, and it was an actress or a singer or something. I was like, you know, you don't really see that, so it kind of like struck me like, are we voting for like something on our phones, or like, are you talking about whatever? And then this wave like kind of created, and then like for Deja, she's someone who's in our community that's a performer, so I feel like it was mobilized through her, because like I said, it was something that I was seeing on her page like all the time. Like she was talking about it a lot. And even like I said, my friend Taylor, I wasn't even registered to vote until the beginning of this year because of Dre. Dre, like, he basically, well, not sat me down, it was something that we talked about often. We're in the city of Compton. There's 45,000 registered voters, and there's only 3,000 active voters. And this was, of course, before this midterm election, so I'm pretty sure the numbers have maybe increased. But to have 45,000 that can vote and only 3,000 that did vote for the past couple years, it was just something that kind of struck a chord with me. And I'm like, I'm a part of that problem. And what I was telling Deja was basically, I'm like, I don't necessarily, like, we had this talk maybe the day of the election. I was just like, I don't necessarily agree with, not that I disagree with voting, but I don't think I'm doing my part when I'm doing this. I don't feel that's connected, because people were like, oh, you know, I voted and this and that, but I was like,
what else can you do?
Right, but it was like,
that's the faith.
And this was the feeling that I got, where it was just like, I think a lot more Black people need to feel this, where it was just like, I see that y'all or like you're emotionally driven to push voting, and I see that this is something that's actually a career for you. And then you talking about education, as someone that's just like, okay, I do this stuff and I have this platform, I'm like, I'm willing to just stand behind y'all as y'all push this. And I think Black people need to do that a little bit more, where it's like, I know that this is not my lane. This is not my lane. I know that I don't really see the end. I don't really see the light at the end of the tunnel, but clearly y'all do, and I'm willing to be a sister and just like help push and do my part and go cast my ballot. I'm willing to show up for you guys.
And I think that like that's amazing, because like first thing, everybody's looking for the Black leader. There's like, no, we're like on a caravan, okay? Like, and there's passengers and there's drivers, and then there's the person who, you know, you get in the car, there's the person who drives, and there's a person who does the music, there's a person who's in charge of the food, there's a person who's in charge of like, you know, passing out the napkins or whatever. Like that's kind of like what it is when it comes to policy. It's a destination. And when it comes to politics, it's not necessarily about wanting outcomes. It's making sure that we're a part of the decision. Like, just think about it like this, right? If I go and get some food and I get what I want, and I sit down and I'm like, eat. You got to eat. And you're like, I hate this. I don't eat this. I'm allergic. But maybe if you would have came with me, you could have got what you wanted. Like in the lowest of levels, that's kind of what it means. Like, not in the sense of that's an instant action, but just to go back on, like, I just wanted to introduce, like, when I talked about arts and commissioners and stuff, and you're talking about art. So Kristen Sakota is the executive director of the LA County Arts Commission. She is a Black woman who has had experience in, I don't want to like say, I don't think she goes on a record as being a gay woman, but I believe she is. Like, I mean, she's not gonna like. No, I don't know her. She's like, I don't know her personally, but she just got in. She was just appointed She was appointed by Garcetti as the new commissioner of art. So the first Black woman ever. So now when we're going into grants, like, I mean, from the smallest of individual residency grants to the largest of school grants, the art grants. Now you have a Black woman who comes from this who comes from that lens, right? So when it's saying like, well, how do I get more? That's still politics.
Oh yeah,
that's politics. So now it's about sharing the information. Ooh, she does that. So how do I not saying
sharing the information?
Get on her, getting in her caravan, seeing what she does, see how I can support her, or talking to her. These people are in office because we voted for them.
Right.
When like our taxes literally pay their thing. If they want to get reelected, then they have to make sure. Now we keep on saying like, you know what, you and this. I'm seeing now I'm newest in policy. Now I'm saying I worked in politics forever. I come from a marketing background. Like I worked in marketing and branding, and nonprofit just was like, okay, like God was like, okay, yes, so you gonna quit your job? And I'm like, no, I ain't gonna quit my job. What you talking about, bro? I just got this job. I'm just need to get my bills right, whatever. And I quit because I had to quit. And then when I started really doing a New Black Era, 100%, everything started making sense. And then that moved into policy. Now I'm feeling the most comfortable I've ever been, right? I'm talkative. I'm charismatic. I'm like a nerd. Like I'm artsy. Like I'm very professional. But so now I can be in this space where I can be like more so a bridge and not necessarily, but I don't want to be the leader. I want all of us to be the leaders. There's we don't have a Martin Luther King of this day, right?
Not at
There's
all.
not, and even so, like, I would have not like sided on both sides between Martin Luther King or Malcolm X. I'm radical as fuck, but I'm also thoughtful as fuck. Like I'm not sure if I would have really been with civil disobedience, but I'm really okay with challenging norms and being that person to say what everybody, even in my family, I'm the oldest of 7 girls, so I'm gonna say something and you gonna be mad. But if I didn't say it, you would have never known. Right. So I think that it's important that we don't look for leaders. We look to educate ourselves. But everybody's not about that. Like everybody on Avalon and Central ain't trying to get that education. Like that's not what it is. So we have to use different means, different ways, and that's why art and media and podcasts and all that is just so important. When we talk about politics deals with equity. You know what I mean? It deals with level playing field.
And that's the level playing field is important. Did you have a point that you wanted to make?
I was just gonna say, find your gift and do it well.
You
can vote. But then at the same time, like, how are you impacting the people that are in your immediate influence?
Right.
Yes.
And a lot of times we want to do things at a high level, which we can. But then also, too, I'm sure there's something that you can contribute to your community wherever you're at. And that's really the first step. Like she said, a lot of people look outside of themselves to make a change, but it really is within you.
Right.
So that's really the biggest thing. And just to plug Homeroom, that's exactly what Homeroom is about.
Right.
Is for people to come together, use their gifts within the education space in order to make an impact for kids.
Right.
And I think if we keep that at the forefront and do not become discouraged by what we see in the media,
right,
but empowered to be like, I'm Ashley and I can make a change through whatever it is that I'm good at.
Right.
You know, and that in itself is making a difference.
And that's what I got to do with them hardhead kids. I'm telling you, because ISEF gave me a headache, both of them. And I love the idea of a school being like black and mirrored and inclusive. But my biggest thing with ISEFs in general, because I had an art-based, like my project is a political project that's art based, right? Because I was like, the only way I'm gonna get them to understand is like infiltrating and pulling them down.
Right.
Because now I have people who can write a song, write a rap, write a lyric, have a photo shoot, dress something up, do makeup to expose their community concern. At ISEF View Park, their thing I didn't even know was a big thing for them in the 7th and 6th grade. Sexual and physical abuse. Sexual and physical abuse. They did a whole PSA. One girl could not stand catcalling. You know what I mean? She could not stand catcalling. The other one was like, yeah, they had this whole conversation that I facilitated but didn't throw my opinion on. But ISEF Inglewood, police brutality was huge. Gang violence was huge. Cyberbullying was huge. But they wanted to do music and dance. You know who I'm talking about, those girls. And the thing is like, but I realized going from 2 different schools in the same year, this school don't got no money. These teachers aren't as motivated to get the job done because they still using chalkboards or they don't have, the janitor. I was so mad one time. I'm like, where's the janitor? Why y'all janitor only come once to twice a week?
Right.
It's kids every day. These are little kids. They need to be cleaned up after. Like, this ain't Japan where they got to clean up after themselves at school. Like, then you go into this school who has like air conditioning and smart boards and
those are like the little things where, I mean, it does take for a community to basically show up. And I talk about this maybe like every other show. Like, if you have kids, go show up at your kids' schools and go see what's really going on. Go see the climate, the environment of where they're being taught. But if you guys are just now tuning in, this is the Initiative Radio Show here at the Good News Radio Station. I'm your new girl, Jasmine Renee. Shout out to those that are in the comments just saying hey. And then we have guests here, Deja, Cheyenne, and Ashley. Very grateful for you guys coming out. But kind of like shifting the conversation a little bit, still on like politics kind of, but just we are all Black women sitting here, so Black girl magic is like a thing that I think is just very like prevalent in this day and age for us to like recognize who we are and to celebrate ourselves. But with the New Black Era homeroom, and then I have Initiative, and then Deja with your art, I think I want to get a conversation started about like how important is it to represent for Black people. Because I was talking to somebody yesterday who was talking to a non-Black person, and they asked a question like, is your sole concern Black people?
Yes.
Is your sole concern just for Black people, as if like our issues are not enough and that we have room in our bag to care about others? And like I was telling them, like, no, I do not wish for any non-Black kid to get a poor education. The way that I advocate for my Black kids, Black and brown, because that's predominantly who I have, I also wish for someone to be advocating for them. But when it comes to those that look like me, I have to do it because I don't see too many people out here doing it. And that's why, like with the homeroom and stuff, seeing, the push for Black male educators and bringing them together and making them feel empowered. Like, it's a necessary thing that has to happen, because like, I think I was telling my boyfriend, like, it's 2%. And I'm like, 2% is low. And then when you also look at there's some page, the Black male educators, the BMEC, I think. But they post just different facts. And it was just like, they posted videos about kids saying that they feel like for any type of reform or change, most kids will go to a Black male. Yeah. Most kids will go to the Black male, educator or whatever he is in the school. A lot more kids feel safer around Black teachers. They just feel a little cooler. They understand, like, maybe not completely, but subconsciously it's like, you have been through a lot, so I feel comfortable in expressing my hurt or my pain with you. I feel comfortable in your space because I know that in my awkwardness or what makes me an outcast, I feel like that's something that you're also going through. So like, we kind of like are this homeroom for students across the world. And I think getting people to understand, like, being a teacher, because I think I read a post that your dad was like, don't be a teacher or something. Yeah. And he is an educator. And it's like, yes, the money is not there, but then at the end of the day, like, it's a huge reward. And even only being like, this is my 3rd year being in education, I'm like, the love that I get from my kids, no matter where I'm at. Like, I had someone, I was gonna go see Black Panther, and I'm like dressed up in like sweat, just like this, and it was raining, and like these kids, they're like, Miss Jasmine or whatever. They run up to me, and the mom was like, I thought they saw a celebrity or something. And I'm like, it was just love that it wasn't at school. Like, I didn't know that I was going to see them, but they literally like spotted me out while I was like going to the movies, and like just ran and gave me a big hug. And like, there's countless stories that I can give on that, but it's just like that love and knowing like, dang, I really like, as a little 13, 12-year-old, you really think highly of me, because the 13 and 12-year-olds is like, F everything, like, nah, I don't want to talk to you. But you really think highly of me to the point where you literally are willing to like run up to me and just give me a hug. Yeah. And I'm like, those are the things where I think Black people need to understand. Like, there's also this thing, like, Black people, when we heal ourselves or when we make reform and change for us, the world becomes a better place. Because the reform and the change for us is not just for us. People are being treated better because of that. Our issues are not just about us. And I'm like, if we could all get together on the same page. On the same page of just reform, and not necessarily we want this to be read, it has to be read, but just reform. Right. I think we could like make a headway for the world.
And I think that is like the biggest piece that's missing when we talked about who were the leaders, right, within the Black community. And I think it is time for us to come up with a new strategy, like for kids, you know, as far as just their outcomes. When I think about homeroom and I think about education, and you think about even just education in LA, and you think about who are the students that are underperforming. And it's not an LA issue, it's a nationwide issue. And so I do agree that as a Black woman, I have a responsibility to advocate for my community and the needs of my community. Some people may not agree with this next statement, but I also feel like in some instances, we cannot be afraid to include other people in the conversation. Doesn't mean that we're not advocating for our kids, but I think that it is important to be able to work, right, to be able to include other people in the conversation. I say this because in LMU, my experiences have shaped me, right? So I went to Loyola Marymount University, and I walked onto campus, and tuition was $57,000 a year. Like, who's paying that? You know, and even with financial aid and different things, you know, my dad wasn't working at the time. Tuition was still $1,000 a month. So I was like, okay, I've seen what student loan debt has done, you know, to my family and to my parents. Like, I'd rather like take a semester out than going down that route, you know? And so I was introduced to this program called the Student Worker Program on campus, which were for students within financial need. I was the only African-American female within that program, 24 girls and boys, right? But we're all broke, white, Hispanic, Black, some of them immigrants, some of them from different places, but we were all literally fighting for our education, setting up our graduation, over 50,000 chairs, you know, taking our finals 2 weeks early, you know, waking up 5 a.m. every single day, picking up trash on campus. And these were like literally my brothers and my sisters. You know, we had a very similar need, which was finance, and the Student Worker Program provided that equity for me to be able to get an education. So I say that to say that I think it is our responsibility at the table to advocate for, well, for me anyway, for African-American students. Right. But don't be afraid to see the humanity in other people, to include them in the conversations. But then don't forget why you're there.
Right.
Agree. And I put that in my music. Like, when I'm singing about a woman, it's definitely a Black woman. When I'm singing about power, it's definitely black power. But if you are Latino, Asian, white, if you relate to that, I'm not mad at you. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
If you relate to that and you're in my audience, thank you for being there. You know, if you relate to that and now you share my music, thank you. But I'm singing for my Black brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
For sure.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's because that's just what I know, and that's what fuels my heart and my intention. So, but anyone is more than able to relate to emotion. Doesn't have a color.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Emotion doesn't have a destination. It doesn't matter who it touches. It's just as long as you are touched and affected and want to do better, please, by all means, be affected.
Yeah, and I think even to tag on to what both of you guys are saying, I'm more on the side of like, okay, let's just be Black. But I think also because I play basketball, there needs to be a point guard, there needs to be a post, there needs to be wings, there needs to be a guard. Everybody can't be on the same. Everybody can't be a post and think we're going to get the ball up the court. Sure. Everyone can't just be. Yes, and I'm like, and I realize this in being pro-Black, that there has to be people that can speak to other people and that feel comfortable, or that see that we do need to have these people come and sit over here. And then as I'm realizing that, I'm also learning like, okay, now I can go and sit, because for a long time I'm like, yo, I'm not talking to no. I went to Concordia University, all white people. It was probably like a handful. Yes. It was a handful of like Black people, but it was just one of those things where it was just like, I don't know what is about to happen up here. Like, I don't know. And I'm playing basketball and I'm like, for the past 15 years, I've been playing with Black girls. I played with Hispanic girls too, Black and Hispanic girls. They've been my sisters over the years. Every team that I've been on, we've been cool. Now I have to form a bond. I can't be on the outside. I'm getting a scholarship to be here. I have to form a bond with white people. Like, we're on the court. This is something that I love. Now you're a part of something that I love. And that was like really, it wasn't hard. It wasn't a hard thing to grasp. Yes, like there were a lot of differences. There were a lot of conversations that had to happen, but it wasn't hard. And that kind of has like gotten me to this step, like, yeah, I'm still on this, like, everything is black type thing. But then, like, hearing stuff like that, I'm now at a point now where I'm not going to tell you, like, no, it needs to just be about black, because we need people like you guys who understand, like, no, it's a world. It's not just a black world. It's a world where everyone is kind of here. And yes, there are people that simply advocate for black people, and that's fine, as long as we also have people on the team that understand that we have to have those conversations with everybody.
And that's so interesting, because that's like, I'm opposite. No, I have the new black era. That's it. Like, I'm not excluding anyone, but I just feel like we're already fighting for that. We're not saying we're fighting for our voice. We're fighting for the space to have our voice. Everyone, I'm not intentionally saying I'm not against anyone, but I'm for black people. Right. And it's oftentimes where I have created events or policy or been on projects where my logo isn't up because it says new black era. So that's what, so for me, again, I studied politics at a black college. First of all, that was already an experience for me. Growing up in LA, you're not really, like, now it's different. Before social media, we're not really exposed to HBCU culture. Right. So I ended up going to HBCU. I got into 14 schools. I graduated high school with honors at 3.8 GPA and cannot afford to go to not one school. So education is not education, but the understanding financial aid is very important to me. So every junior, senior I know, they've already gotten a spiel. But I ended up at a black college because I could not afford to go to in Hofstra, Pace, any of the schools that I went to that I wanted to go to. Like, I was prepared to go to. So when I went there, the challenge was studying politics was which lens. We had to intentionally do papers through a black lens and through a regular lens. And then the question was, don't expect a black politician to see black issues. Right. Don't expect a black artist to see black issues. And then so I always was challenged to be between to go back and forth in between that space. And now I know that it's not expected from me because I'm in politics and I'm like Dr. Jody said, the politics of respectability is out for me. I'm a black as fuck. Like, I'm a black woman. My parents are black. Don't ask me what I'm mixed with. I'm blackity black, don't crack. So for me, when you're saying, well, nobody asked me about other people. Like, I don't know. I haven't had that. I haven't really had that experience. And also, like, I don't mean to say this, and I don't want to, like, not saying I don't want to be judged, but I really honestly don't see how many people outside of the black race that I really interact with. Like, I can't relate. Like, I don't know. Like, I live in View Park. Like, I see others in passing, but they don't want to talk about politics. You know what I mean? They're not ready for that conversation. When I'm in policy making spaces, again, Law Pie has just changed my lens. Like, first I thought I was never going to see people who look like me and be with people who look like me. Now I'm walking these policy making spaces and I'm recognizing Miss Angela Reddock Shaw and Jamar Hayner and Joy Atkinson and Jackie Hawthorne and Jackie DuPont, like Jackie Horton. Dang, they all have the same name. Like, I'm recognizing these black women. Now we might be the, like, 3 out of 20 at the table, but I'm understanding how it's a need for that. Do you want to know why? Because in these policy making spaces, in these nonprofit, not even that, let's talk about nonprofit organizations. Like, nonprofit organizations are the pillars in community. So when you go to something, whether it's a Planned Parenthood, a women's clinic, or you're going to a basketball clinic, or you're going to, like, a football Pop Warner, all those are nonprofit organizations. And we're trying to figure out why they don't sustain, because African Americans are not a part of the grant making process. They're not a part of the nonprofit education. How do you do donors? How do you do fundraising? We just want to go fund me, sell fish fry plates, car wash, but we're not really a part of everything. So when they ask me, which community do I serve? The black community. I can't really speak on the Latino community.
Absolutely.
Because immigration, I feel, and I am a ally in social justice, equity, and education issues. I am an ally, but I am not No, it's for us by
and
us.
I think
I
something.
think that's we're kind of saying the same
The
thing.
same exact
yeah, we're
thing.
saying the same thing. Whereas like when you get to the table, don't forget why you're there.
Exactly.
Right.
We're allowing you to be an ally in our space.
This
'Cause
is
for
my
me.
space,
This is for
but-
me and my people. Yeah.
Right, but I don't feel
I'm not going to close the
I'm
door
not
on
fearful to have a conversation with someone that is different than me, or
Exactly.
may have a different experience
Yeah.
than me,
Like
or
my
may have a
whole-
different insight than
Yeah,
me.
and I would be completely preposterous to have that idea because my whole life, my stepfather is a white man, like a white Polish man, like Shramsky is his
Polish.
last.
Introduce
Yeah,
me.
you know what I'm
Introduce-
saying.
interesting.
My best friend is white and Latino. My best friend is white and Asian. Like I'm not a. And I love these people with all of my heart. And I'm the type of people where I can say white people are full of shit, and they're like, "Yep." Because they
Right.
understand me, they understand the process we're in, they understand where we're at in this world, and they almost because of them. Some of them are white and Asian or white and Latino. They're almost like I'm Asian, I'm Latino, because they don't
Right.
even want to deal with white people. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? So it's all about the type of. Again, I sing for my people, I sing for Black people, but if you are, I'm not saying don't come in here with appropriation. Don't come in here with that. But if you are understanding of what is really,
That's
really
key.
going on and affecting me, please have.
And
a
I
seat.
think there's even an etiquette with that because
There's a key, yeah.
there was something that I forgot what it was, but there's an etiquette with understanding and appreciating, and there's a difference. I was listening to the Black Girl podcast, and shout out to them.
Love you guys.
Yes,
We love them.
but Scotty Beam was kind of talking about how it was around the episode was around the time of Charlottesville, and she was saying like, white people, y'all that are saying, we're at the rallies too, like y'all need to don't push us away. Like we're on the same level with you. And it's like, no, you're not.
Right.
Like just speak. And it's the same thing with me. I was born with both born in a household with my mother and my father and my 3 little brothers. We had a very, white picket fence type of living. So when it comes to me dealing with these kids that are in the inner city, I can't sit up there and be like, oh yeah, we're all fatherless and all of this. No, I have to stand at a distance and I have to advocate from a distance, but I cannot sit and hope that someone advocates for me when I didn't go through that. And I think that's a part of advocacy, when you don't always have to go through the things that you're advocating for. And I think with white people, sometimes they think, oh, we're on the same level because I was sitting at Charlottesville when all of that went on. Or maybe Trump has also said things about me. And it's like, no, in advocacy, I can never sit down with my kids and say, oh, well, yeah, we were all fatherless, or, my mom was doing this on drugs, or this is that and the other. Like, that's just not a thing that I can do. And I think when it comes to advocating for others or being an ally meaning that you can't really sit with this group, you have to understand there are certain boundaries.
It's
yeah, you can't push.
Yeah.
Like, even being at a funeral, like, you're not finna sit with the family if that's not your family member. You have to sit where you go. Once you get out of the little thing, you go and do what it is that you're supposed to do.
I'm still here
but you're
showing my
supporting,
condolences,
but you can't come and be like, oh, I'm about to sit in the front with the family
because
and I'm about
last
to
week
do
my
this.
granny died, so I get
Right,
it. No,
you can't
it's
do
not the
that.
same. It's not
And
the
I think
same.
that's a necessary thing that white people have to understand. And like you said, I don't mess with white people like that. Not even that I don't mess with them. I don't interact with them. I don't see them. My whole life is basically around Black and brown. But one thing that I do, and it kind of like hurts me to say this because this is something where like I'm honestly always like trying to understand history. I'm trying to understand African American history to see like how we can do better now. And something that my boyfriend has brought up to me is like, Black people wouldn't have gotten out of slavery if it wasn't for a few white people.
For sure.
Yeah,
there was
allies.
somebody on the outside.
yeah.
And that's something like, even having a conversation with him, I'm like, yo, I'm not saying that. But then understanding it, it's like, yo, like, all right, man, like at some point in time, because we were so stripped and we were so new to this environment and this area, at some point in time, there was a white person slipping us literature to read. There was a white person slipping us food. And I do understand that at some point in time, yes, there is a necessity to use or have allies. But at the end of the day, it takes a Harriet Tubman, a Nat Turner to go and push the narrative even more. But the literature, or like with I'm forgetting his name.
Even oddly enough, like going through those times, like we'd be surprised. It was usually a white person taking a picture of us and putting it in like the newspaper to kind of support or like show like they're trying. You know what I'm saying? Even
Right.
if granted the title wasn't the best, like there's again, there has been times where little do we know there are white allies for us. You know what I'm saying? Even when I first started my like artistry, like when I first got out of college, my mindset I do not want to audition for these white guys. I just don't. You know what I'm saying?
It's a weird feeling.
I'm just not in the mood to be in white Hollywood. You know what I'm saying? And even like when talking to like going through like mock auditions for agencies, I was like, I want to be in black Hollywood. That's just what I want to do. But you pay attention to like just little do we know, Lena Waithe has somebody who has white hands and who's helping her support being the best gay
Funders.
gay artist at the moment. You know what I mean? So it's like it's just all about finding the right people. It's at the end of the day, it's the right people who are down to support you.
But sticking to your morals,
Don't
your
forget
values.
who you are.
And it's so
Which I think
interesting.
Lena Waithe is a good
she's
an example,
Yeah.
a great example of that.
And I was also listening to a podcast before on my way here, and it was talking about Colin Kaepernick. We all know the story
Right.
and things like that. And one thing that the speaker had brought up was, okay, in the media, they were depicting it as he's disrespecting the flag, right? But not really foreseeing what message he was really trying to show. And so he was saying, you know, what is it going to take for people to really, we understand, right? And within our community as far as why that was so important, but like for you to really think this man would be willing to give up his entire like $1 million contract that he's not going to easily be able to get and hasn't and put his entire career and life on the line beyond your politics, beyond what you think, like as a human being, like what tension is this black man feeling, or not just man, what tension is this man feeling for him to be pushed to a point to make a stance?
And it's so interesting that you said that, because like let's get into like another hard part about politics, policy, change, next steps. You have to be willing to make the sacrifices.
Yeah.
Like, people are not willing. Like my boyfriend and like, don't come over to watch football. Ain't no football. Like, what do you mean? Like, it's like, but you're trained to love football. You play football. Football is a thing, and I'm not judging him, but I'm also like side eyeing the people who want the change but are not willing to make the necessary sacrifices. So for me, like black, brown, white, Hispanic, whatever, well then don't complain. Don't complain if you're not willing to. Not saying I don't want to judge people who didn't vote, even though I think that voting is a first step of being like, I don't agree with the people who don't vote because they don't think it's going to make a change, but I don't agree with the people who complain and don't want to mobilize. Like I don't agree with people who complain. It's just like the parent who, let's say basketball, you complain that your kids don't have no water and he's always tired. Why haven't you donated two cases of water? Like, you know what I mean? You got you could not go to McDonald's, or you could not do this, but you're not making the necessary steps. The same with health. You complain about your health, but you don't want to go on walks. You don't want to eat fruit.
Right.
Like, to me, it's about like, okay, I can give you the books. I can give you the I can give you the education. I can give you the books. I can give you the resources. I can give you everything you need to get everything you want. And that's just like with purpose and passion, just like life separately, well, life in general. If you're not willing to make the necessary steps and the sacrifices to see the change that you seek out, then what is it that you really want?
Yeah,
you can't keep on expecting
course.
other people to do it.
Yes.
I can only do so much. I can only do so much as a policymaker. I can only do so much as the New Black Era. We can only do so much on this podcast. We can't force people to open it up. We can't force people to do anything. We can have the conversations. We can do we can do our part. We can educate. We can post, market, back boost, whatever it is that we need to do. But to me, my challenge is in every conversation, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? Not what you're expecting other people to do. What are you going to do about it?
And I think at this point, like, and it's so nerve-wracking, and I'm sure as just being people that are, like, aware, like you said, that know, like, just the different things that are going on, but sometimes our black community does need us to go and grab their hands and show them how to walk and how to do the bare minimum. And I think, like I said, when it comes to being a teacher, I had to get to a point where it's like, yes, my parents did an excellent job and are still doing an excellent job raising my brothers. But when it came to showing up in the schools, when it came to if I was acting up, they showed up. Or if I said something about the teacher, they showed up. These parents in the inner city are not doing that all the time. So I have to say, like I said, I'm getting this check regardless of who shows up. I think we have to take that mindset and put it towards our advocacy. Even if you don't show up, I'm still going to do, and I'm still going to bring you along. And when it comes to even when, as I'm understanding advocacy, I know that there's a lot of people that are not as spiritual as I am when it comes to like faith. I was born and raised in the church.
Oh, I'm a daughter of the King. Let's get that on record.
Right. And my parents are ministers. Yeah, my parents are ministers and all of that. So that's something that, for me, what I'm realizing is that Jesus was an advocate. Jesus was a Jew. He went to the Gentiles. The Gentiles were others, which is very similar to the way that white people look at the black people. He was a heavy advocate for the Gentiles, and that is who he went to go save because his own people rejected him. And I think a lot of people, they don't realize that part, that he did go advocate for people that weren't, because this man was supposed to be a king. This man was supposed to be the first to ever do what he did. But he still was like, y'all not rocking with me? I'm still going to go advocate for them. And even though they spit in his face, even though they didn't really mess with him, even though his people didn't rock with him, he still gave them a reason or gave them opportunity to come and join along with him. And I think in being an advocate, you have to understand, like, yes, they're not going to come Monday, they're not going to come Friday, they're not going to come in 2 years sometimes, but at some point in time, they're going to be sitting down and they're going to hear something and remember what it is that you said. Even as a teacher, your kids might act up for the whole 8 months
or the whole 3 years.
The whole, right. You'd be like, oh, okay, so you got it now. But I think in being an advocate, and especially as a black advocate, we have to understand, like, no, our people have been, we just talked about trauma. Our people have been through traumatic situations. Just because you are black does not mean that they're going to listen to you, or that trauma decreases when you're in front of them. That trauma is still there. So you kind of have to show grace. The grace that was given to you, you kind of have to show grace in being an advocate. Like, I know you out here selling drugs, you got this rag on your hip and you think this is it. Okay, but I'm still going to show love. I'm not going to point the finger and be like, yo, you going to hell and you out here bringing the community down. Like, it's like, let's go. Like, even with these shirts. So these are my shirts. A homeless man, he wanted to clean my windows. So he's sitting in front of the car and he reads the shirt. So he's just like, oh, that's a dope shirt. I would wear that. And he's just talking, whatever. So I'm like, oh, here you go. So every time I see this dude, he got the shirt on. And I'm like, that was something where it wasn't anything that he had to give me. It wasn't anything that he had to do. But I'm just like, if this shirt makes you feel empowering, if this shirt can help get you out of this moment, here you go. You can have it. Like, that's what it is. And I think a lot of times we don't think to give, even when it's not being given back.
And that's so hard to swallow. And it's really hard to swallow, just given the climate of our country, right? And, but it's like going back to your faith, and it's really what we're taught to do. But people don't want to hear it. It's such a hard conversation. I have this conversation all the time with people, and it's something that I've grappled with personally within my own leadership. Like, what does it mean to be a person of faith that's interested in policy and education? Like, it's a very hard intersection, because politics is so polarized. Where we had talked about before, like, as an advocate, focus on the truth. Focus on the issues. And
the impact.
And the impact. We get so lost in the conversation where it's like we're not even talking about the issues sometimes. When we're thinking about voting and electing, we're literally talking about
drama
and who is supporting this person and where's the money coming from and this and that, and it's like, but when you ask about the issues, like, are you really informed? So I would say, as an individual, be informed.
Yes.
And I would say, find your lane. Los Angeles African American Women Public Policy Institute plug. Jackie, I remember one class she taught us, she was like, there's a role for everybody. Like, if we think about just black people in general, you need people that are agitators on the front line. Black Lives Matter, right? You need people at the table that are policymakers, that are able to navigate those spaces. You need people in the classroom, like, know your role and then contribute to that role. But I think we get caught up in we even get divisive in, like, how you plan your role. Like,
it's like,
so you just have to figure out, how are you going to contribute? Because, like you said, everyone's contribution is necessary.
And if you don't see how you can join something with what your personal contribution may be, then create that.
There we go.
And I think that people think that they, like, not people think, but I don't want people to think that they have to conform to be a part of politics. You do not have to conform to be part of politics. Like Fannie Lou Hamer and Rosa Parks are two different people. But also know Rosa Parks was not the first one to do it. She was the one who got the national attention. Like she was not the first one to do it. But so like it's about sticking to the issue and being okay if you're not the face of it, or being okay if you're new. Like I'm not gonna not do the new black era. Do you know how many people told me like, girl, my mama, I love you, mom, but she was like, so you gonna quit your job? And like I'm working again now, but part of my work through the new black era has propelled me to a career that I've never thought I would have, because now I've had the advocacy experience. Now I have all these organizations. So I came to the table at a public affairs firm, and I'm like, yeah, I've done programs and projects with all these different schools and people, and they were focused on black issues. Oh, great. Now we have someone who can speak on behalf of millennial black people. And like, now, am I the advocate? No, because if you ask me something about education, I'm calling Ashley. Like I'm not gonna speak. That's why we need everybody.
Another conversation is intergenerational as well too. I think you hit on it twice, as far as like us as young people trying to create our lanes, and sometimes the resistance that we get from people that are older than us, and that's been kind of the basis for a lot of the homeroom events, like celebrating black male educators. We had an
you guys were wearing a shirt.
Yeah, our problems are intergenerational. Therefore, our solutions must be intergenerational. And that was
what do you call it? Like ageism? Is that a thing?
I think
when people ask me like what is your greatest barrier, like as a teacher in my first 2 years, I really felt like it was age.
It is, because I even have a problem because you come in and they see your name. Like, I hate when they call me Miss Jasmine.
Or little girl. What's up, little girl? Like,
right. Or like, and I'm like, no, call me by my last name. Like, and people are like, well, it's not that. And I'm like, no. Call me by my last name, because I'm not walking around calling you by your first. But I'm like, and that's a thing where it's like, I was literally like earlier this year, because like I said, I'm in a new position, and I'm like, do I say something or not? And I'm like, just slip it in like, oh yeah, Miss Gates. So now it's like, okay, this is what we call her. But no, you're not gonna belittle, because I did that my first year working with the ISEP kids. I did Miss Jasmine, and it's a different dynamic. When they call me by my last name, Miss Gates, it's a different respect that is given. And not that the kids didn't respect me, but it was a more of a homie feel. And it's like, I'm trying to teach you math, and you sitting over here trying to be a homie. Right. And that's not what it was. So I'm like,
I'm not your friend.
So the third year, the second and the third year, I'm like, it's Miss Gates. That's what it is, and that's what it's gonna be. But then even with like my coworkers, it's like, no, because I don't even know your first name. Right. You told me your last name, and that's what we're doing. Right. But I think ageism is like a legit, and then being a black woman and being black and then a woman.
Jesus. It's
so
like
many.
The people
being a black woman in America, we stand at the intersection of so many things. Like for me, I can't, like feminism, like don't bring your feminism to me if it's not intersectional. Like you can't. Like, you want to know why? Because women would not have gotten the right to vote if the black women didn't mobilize the movement. Right. Like, it's just about, like, just to circle back on like a question you asked a while ago about being a black woman and what that means and how you represent. When we're a black woman, we speak for men, women, and race. Right. You know what I mean? And now, I cannot share the personal issues of police brutality as a black man, but I can share, my sympathy and empathy I stand in the middle, because in anything that is black, they're going to choose gender first. Anything that is race, anything that is, if it's gender oriented, they're going to choose men, right? Mm-hmm. If it's race oriented, they're going to choose white. Mm-hmm. So black women and our struggle stands at the intersection. So intersectionality is important to me. That's why most of the successful, movements are mobilized by black women. Mm. Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter is amazing. And I'm not a protester, but I'm an ally with, like, I'm not a protester.
Right. And I think, we're getting ready to wrap up, but I think, even with, Black Lives Matter, or even just with a lot of stuff, I think there are a lot of black women that we could do a better job when it comes to advocating. I think a lot of black women, yes, we do stand up for black men, but I think a lot of black women have also sided with the narrative that has came with the white woman, the feminist movement. And I feel like white women understand that they're men, just like what we saw with voting. White women understand that it's white men before this woman of color narrative. And even with that term, I don't even sit with that. I'm like, no, I'm a black woman. It ain't no woman of color, nothing. If they want to be that, that's them. But white women will sit with white men before they sit with black women or any other woman. And I think a lot of times when you cross those paths over, you kind of take in those mindsets. And we know just historically, like, the family unit has been destroyed since slavery days. The black woman and the black men have, it's been strategically put so that we can be at war with each other, from seeing the black man being lynched and his manhood being taken from him, and the woman feeling like, or even not being lynched, but just his manhood being taken from him by the masters in front of the community, and her being like, you can't come back into this home because you're not a man anymore. And that's something that has been strategically all the way down to the government aid, and feeling like you can't get aid if you have a husband in the household. But I do think on both ends, black men and black women do need to support each other more. I think because even in that conversation, the children get lost out, and as we know as educators, the children are lost out on a very grand scale. Even when you look at just one kid, mom is probably working, dad is probably working, or maybe mom is not there or dad is not there, and the child is losing out. So then the child now has to figure out how to be an adult at 18 because he or she didn't see anything. So the children are also losing out. And I think we as the black community, the woman, we have to support the men, we have to support the woman, so that together we can support our children. I think that family unit, because they're saying in the world, the family unit is, like becoming torn apart. But I think for black people, that is where our core is with family, when we have the family unit. Yeah, so I think that's something that we have to get as adults. We have to be intentional about who we're having kids with. We have to be intentional about who it is that we want to marry. I think it has to be, there can't be this aspect of like, oh, we can just end it, we can just do that. I think we have to be very intentional because our kids, our kids have to benefit from that. So much. But thank you guys for coming in and having this conversation. Thank you for having us, listeners. Did you guys want to say any, last closing things words about the topic, the whole show?
I just want to say thank you so much for having me on this platform. Like, conversations like this, like, I'm fired up. Continue the conversation. Join us. Join me at The New Black Era on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, or my personal page at Cheyenne Wins. Join organizations, join people, join homeroom, don't only ask, but also challenge, be a part, speak up. It's okay if what you're saying is different than what everybody else is saying. So this podcast, and the goal of this, is to really say, what do we do next? The next thing you do is you stand up, you speak up, you mobilize, and you show up. Just show up. Wherever it is that you have an issue show up. Wherever it is you have an interest in, show up. And be okay with being vulnerable, transparent, and pushing that norm. You don't only have to get that through the New Black Era. You can get that anywhere. And if you don't see it, create it.
Right. Ashley?
I just want to say thank you for being on this podcast or this radio show. It was really exciting. It's always good to be able to elevate the stories of students and educators, because it is an issue that I feel like most people, it's not on their radar, right? If you're not an educator, if you're not in the classroom. And it was an honor to have the conversation with Cheyenne as well as Deja, and how these different lanes intersect. I think more importantly, homeroom, we have an event coming up New Year's Day. And so if you follow us at _the_homeroom_ or my personal page at Ashley Christina Miller, there will be information to follow. The purpose of the New Year's Day event is to bring in the new year a new way, to fundraise for a teen summit that we want to do next year. That teaches kids those skills that they don't learn in school. So leadership, emotional resilience, how can art and creativity push you to be the next innovators, business owners, whatever it may be. And so if you have a gift that you would like to contribute to the experience, to our kids, I just welcome you to reach out to myself so that we can work together and collectively to make a difference. And that's it.
Yes, thank you. Deja?
Jazz, thanks for having me.
Yes.
It was very nice to be here to listen to everybody's medium and everybody's viewpoint and everybody's idea that I honestly got us all to the same idea and ground point, which was basically, how do we just get better and how do we thrive as black people and black women? So I was very happy to be here and end this conversation when it comes to the people and the artists in the world, I think it's just about you staying grounded and staying in your faith and staying in your real, true intentions, and don't let anybody sway that, and write what makes you feel safe, right? What makes you kind of release all this anger that you have towards the situation our world is in, and share it with people who agree and disagree with you, just so everybody can start thinking. That's the majority. Just so we all can start thinking.
Where do we find your music, all of that?
You can follow me on Instagram at Deja Iman, DAISIAIMAN, and all the links are in my profile bio.
Yes. So that wraps it up for us, but I'm very grateful that you guys came out. I think this conversation is just a necessary conversation. So when it comes to like next steps, for those of you guys that are listening, just show up. I think a lot of times we are not showing up. I think even following what these young ladies that have given us their Instagrams and stuff and seeing what they're doing, and just being up on like the verbiage and just being up on what is going on. I think even though we can't, the midterm elections are over, but looking at things, looking at the stuff that you got in the mail and kind of looking over those things, Google is like a huge tool for us. Go and look up like measures on education, or how can me in this city, how can I go to, the office or where the mayor is and go and ask them or for things for my kids? How can I go speak to my principal and talk to them about different things that I know that my kids are going through? Those are the different things that I think you guys should be acting in on your days off. Email, call. But if you show up, I think that's the best way. But a takeaway for this show is just to basically like be educated. Just be educated. Listen to podcasts. Like Deja was saying, there's all forms of media, whether it's music, whether it's going on Instagram and following new people, but just be educated. Look at hashtags. That's something that really helped me with this election, was just looking at like midterm elections 2018. Hashtags really help. But let's just all try to make a positive step, because like I said, 113 million people voted this midterm election. So imagine if we can get some people. It was 30 more million from the last midterm election. So just imagine if we can like ride that wave and kind of do more with our actions. And I know there's a lot of us that probably didn't vote. I know there's a lot of us that feel like, oh, voting isn't important. But as someone who kind of feels like that but is changing their mind, I think there is some validity in casting that ballot and making sure that you stay connected to these politicians and holding them accountable. But that is it. Make sure you follow Deja, Cheyenne, and Ashley, and then also look out for the event that the homeroom is throwing on January 1st. I'll definitely be there. I'll make that my New Year's plan. But thank you guys for coming. Thank you guys for listening. And if you missed the first part, or if you want to pass this episode on, you can definitely do that. The link will be in the bio within the next 5 minutes. But thank you, and I will be back here next Saturday morning at 10.
Peace. Yes, thank you. Man, there's one thing I meant to say I didn't say.